And we are live. Hi there. My name is Mary MacCarthy. I work for the product analytics platform Kubit, and I'm here to launch a show that I will not be hosting. It will be hosted by my friend here, Timo Dechau, a product analytics expert. Timo, first of all, let's make sure that somebody says your name correctly, and let's try to teach people how to say your name correctly. So introduce yourself for us.
Okay, hi. So I usually don't really use my last name a lot, so I will do it now. So my name is Timo Dechau, so we use a very soft CH, which for at least people in other languages and countries is super hard to do. So, but it's totally fine. Just do Timo.
Just Timo. Timo D.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll work on the Dechau part, but I don't speak German. So this show that we're launching together, this is sort of a sneak preview. The first official episode is coming up in 2 weeks on May 18th.
Yes.
It is called Better Together, and we're going to spend just a little bit of time today talking about why we're doing this show in partnership between Kubit and you. Let's start with the title. Before we learn anything else about you, Timo, let's start with the title. Why Better Together?
First of all, I'm quite happy that we found such a good title in the end. Like we were like, let's say we were really like playing around different kind of things. So we had working titles which were very technical, and this one is really nice because like it's how to say it's like from real life. So and when we started to have the conversations about, I think not even like doing this. So we started out to have some conversations about product and data and product analytics in general. And I think one of the things that I'm always telling people is like, both are not really naturally going together. So as someone, I mean, I did product analytics basically when I started doing analytics. So at some point, I also did a little bit of marketing analytics because like it's a more dominant approach, at least like in the past, I guess it still is. And in marketing, data, I would say, is a more natural partner because like it's more straightforward and you optimize campaigns. And so like you have a very short feedback loop. But in product, it was always complicated. And I often see that both worlds live next to each other without doing things together and like exchange views, work together on things. So, and this is like better together. So because like I'm strongly believe that both teams can basically, how to say, benefit a lot from their work. Not even like the product team from the data team, but also like the other way back. So if the product team is good to explain a data team what is essential about the product experience, interesting things can happen. And so this like better together.
Right. And I think we've all seen that marketing and data are almost more like a natural fit, or even the way data works and companies today often kind of grew out of marketing in some ways, or those in bigger companies anyway, marketing people tend to be some of the most data and analytics savvy people. Not the case with product. And the goal of this show and the expertise you will bring to it, and then the expertise of the guests that you'll interview each week, sometimes from product, sometimes from data, will be to make that data and product a better fit. Because obviously you and I both come from backgrounds of knowing the tooling, knowing the tech, but ultimately with all data problems, and even deeper than that, all business problems, the solutions go deeper than tooling or tech. It's really about the human beings behind it, right? In an era of increasing presence of AI and machines and everything, humans have to figure out how to work better together and how to overcome, some of those maybe cultural silos and ingrained practices. So that's what I'm hoping to learn when I watch your show, not in the host seat next time, but in the viewers who have been listening to it.
Yeah, I think this will be, I mean, this is like where I'm really curious about, because I can definitely tell I don't really have, how to say, all the answers to solve that. So I'm in this space between these two worlds for over 10 years. And sometimes it worked pretty well and sometimes it didn't. And so this is like also like what I try to achieve is like when when we have different kind of people on the show to investigate. Okay, why is it not working out? What could be tactics to work it out? Or what could be like even taking a step back and maybe, as you said, so I mean, in the end, it's a people problem. So mostly in first place. And
for people who don't know you, Timo, tell us how you came to this particular specialty.
Yeah.
Just give us the background on your career, and I'll give a little more information even ahead of your career. If people are wondering, you are German, but you live in Denmark, right?
True.
Yes.
Neighboring country, so it's not so far away to cross between both. Yes, so I started out in product. So I worked 8 years in product management, even at a time where, at least like in Europe, it was not named product management. So it was, I don't know, people telling how the website should look like, or what we should do, or like telling or working together with the developers to what we should build. And so I enjoyed this position a lot because like I have a tech background, but I always liked this idea to really figure out, okay, how can we build something that in the end helps our audience to, in the end, do a better job to some degree. And at that time, it was quite natural that, and I think it's still like this, if you're in product, you basically have the whole company as your stakeholders. So everyone is basically standing in front of your table, sometimes literally, and telling you what they want to do in product, because you are the gateway to, hey, we want to implement this kind of feature. And since when I was starting out, of course, like I was younger, I didn't really have a very strong voice. And basically I got my backlog dictated by other people around. And I was looking for some counterweight that I can put into. And because I have a data background, or had it before, worked in controlling and so on, I thought, okay, maybe let's do that. And that was the time when let's say, the first serious web analytics tools were coming up. And so I introduced them and changed the discussion by that. And so brought the whole discussion about, okay, what should we do in product on a, let's say, on an even, let's say, I could give myself a little bit more weight to find these kind of things, and that helped a lot. And so this was basically the starting point for me, that both things always work together. So that wherever I worked in product, one of the first things was to make sure that we have a good data infrastructure to support us. So it was never the case that data was driving our product development, but it was a very important layer that we can always look on and see. And in the end, at least like this is what it comes down to me, at least like with quantitative data, was like to speed up decisions and to be more confident in decisions. And I think especially the confident part was always very important for me, that especially in the startup world where you have to move quick, you want to do it confidently. So you don't really want to just, I mean, yes, sometimes you do gut feeling decisions, but in the end you want to move on and want to say, okay, this can be not totally off. So we have some common ground. And so this is like why data became so important to me. And at some point I even made the transition to just do data, let's say, as a primary thing. So then I was helping companies to get this set up, to get to the point where they can then start to work on. And now, interestingly, more, in the last years, basically really coming back more to also put the product side into place, and then really like go in and help on a holistic point to do this. So, but I'm always stepping between these both worlds.
Yeah, and you explain a lot of this in your Substack, the Hipster Data Stack.
Hipster Data Stack, yeah.
Which, if people want to look it up, what's great about the articles there is you kind of talk through your career path and what you're saying now, but in a way that really is sort of talking out loud some of the problematics that data and product people meet, which I think is probably a lot what kind of your interviews I'm hoping are going to be like, which is just thinking out loud, thinking through these problems. Because whether you're in startups, whether you're in enterprises or somewhere in between, yes, some of those problems are different, some of them are the same. And depending on who you have each week, thinking out loud of how to get past some of these challenges. So you're a product person who became a data person because you had the inclination towards the tech and towards the data, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you find that from what you see, product people generally don't have that inclination? And if they don't, is it for what reasons? Is it personality? Is it fear of the techie side of it? What is it?
I guess this is already one of the questions, which at least like it's sometimes not so easy to answer. I know a lot of product people who come from, let's say, the classic user experience. So more like from qualitative data to some degree. So they are really like used to user test. To investigate how people interact with applications and so on. So they come from this kind of area. And so for them, like the quantitative data is not a natural thing to do. I think this might be one part. And the other part, and I think sometimes, at least like also like I tend to forget this, is to get to a point where you can actually work with good data, you have to do technical stuff. So the data has to be tracked, instrumented. So you have to decide what should we track in which kind of way. And so this is already a complicated part. This is like, when I help companies, this is usually where we start. To even, let's say, okay, what do we do? What do we need as a foundation to get to a point that you actually start? And I think this maybe is also like the difference. So if I work with qualitative data, what I have to do is like, I have to design an interview or a survey. It's, I think, easier when you don't really have a strong technical background to do this. So when I want to have quantitative data, I basically have to get to some kind of technical level or to have a really good engineering team that can help me with that. So maybe this is like another part. It's like sometimes you can work in product without being as close as possible with the engineering team. But when it comes to quantitative data, I guess it's definitely necessary to really work very close with the engineering team, because like, I mean, this is essential. When they don't put, let's say, when they don't surface the data in the right place, the right point of time, first of all, you cannot really trust it. And the other thing is like, you can even make wrong decisions by that. So if, for example, an event is not properly measured and everyone is building everything on top of that, of course, then you get a problem. This could be an explanation for that. So, and maybe as a final thing, the feedback loop is much more complicated. So in marketing, as I said, so marketing is pretty quick when it gets to, let's say, feedback loop. So you see a funnel and you can see how a campaign goes. Let's say you have a campaign, get people on the website, they do 5 funnel steps. So it's pretty easy to analyze and you get a very quick feedback loop. In product, it's much more complicated. So they're often not obvious funnels, even like sometimes not even obvious how you, for example, look at retention. So you have to develop a lot more things yourself, how to, first of all, make a basic setup, how you can see if my product is successful from a quantitative data standpoint. So a lot more questions to answer before you actually can really work. And this, I think, can be quite a barrier to get into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Timo, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. You know, there's so much material out there for anyone who wants to learn about data. I would argue less for the product side, but maybe because I'm less familiar with that. There's also about a million or a gazillion podcasts and shows right now. You know, everybody has a show. Their grandma has a show. Their cat has a show. Like, why bother putting another show out there into the universe at a time when people are drowning in content? And in, you know, let's be honest, ultimately anything like this is content marketing. Why put something into the universe right now?
I think a really good question. And I would still argue that we don't have enough content in data, even in data in general. And I think the reason for that is like, we don't really have, how to say, it's still like kind of pioneer days still.
The Wild West.
Yeah, to some degree, because like I would still say in every data team or analyst team or whatever I work with, there are plenty of question marks. And even like in organizations where you would from the outside assume, hey, they are super good in setup, so they have huge setups and so on. And they come in there and you discuss their questions, and you're like, okay, that's the same question that everyone has. So I think there is
questions and many questions. That's what's
exactly many questions, a lot of. And in my experience, so at least how I approach this is like, what helps me is when I hear other people talking about how they approach different kind of things. So in two ways. So one way could be like, actually, we already worked on that for, let's say, a specific kind of time. And so what I can share is like, these are the things that we learn from it. Very interesting. But it's also interesting, like to some parts, there was not even time to work on that. So I think even like in this stage is pretty valuable to get ideas. So I would not say but to some degree, I'm kind of addicted to ideas in the data space, and especially in the product data space, because there are no obvious solutions. So there are some. I mean, there are some, let's say, some basics that you can definitely apply. But still, I mean, good example. Just yesterday, I read a post by someone on LinkedIn who basically was discussing the concept of, how did he call it? I think anti-retention patterns. So he said, like, there are features that when they're introduced too early can hurt your success and your retention rate. And so they discovered it in a company when they were analyzing the data, and it made a total new concept for me. So yes, when I heard it, it was like, yeah, makes sense. So of course, like I work with, let's say, the other side with retention, but this other way around also makes sense. It will be super interesting to look into this. And I have
upcoming guest, whoever authored the post on
patterns. Yeah, we should.
Coming soon to Better Together.
Definitely. And I have these moments regularly. So sometimes even on a weekly basis. So,
and I know I asked you the question, but I'm going to answer it as well, which is that I find that, again, I'm much newer, obviously, to product analytics than you are, but that in general, shows and podcasts are a terrific way to learn for any topic. And there isn't a whole lot out there specifically on product and data, surprisingly.
True.
Obviously, there's a lot that have been put out by basic how-tos and things like that. But a lot of that is data going back nearly a decade now, put out by, say, the traditional products and analytics platforms, it contains some essential knowledge. Yeah. But in terms of the more cutting edge things, the types of ideas that you're talking about, there's the green space there in terms of helping people learn. And I do believe that these types of shows, again, I know this is self-promotion for us, but they contribute to sort of the democratization of knowledge, where conversations that used to be reserved for universities or ultimately boardrooms and limited to a certain elite can now happen in the public sphere, and anyone can learn. And that's just like super, super, super powerful. And I think, again, that's a sentiment or a feeling that I've sensed in your writings and in the post you've been doing, which is, part of the reason that we wanted to partner with you, is that you're really interested in teaching people, helping them to do this work better. Obviously, if you do better product analytics, you're helping your business, but by sharing those ideas, you're also helping sort of the general pool of knowledge that's out there. So it's more than just kind of a show for the sake of doing a show, for the sake of, spreading knowledge.
And there's maybe one thing which just goes through my head is like, especially, I mean, I think this is something that happens in a lot of area in data, but I think in product maybe even more often, you don't really have 20 people in your company to discuss this stuff.
Right.
So it's often like, I mean, often in data, so sometimes in startup, you're the one data person in this startup. And so, yes, you can hope that that you're in a bigger city and there might be some data meetups and so on. So this was definitely first helpful step. But what changed the thing for me was when I was opening up and starting to post my thoughts and my learnings and so on LinkedIn, to meet people basically around the world from everywhere with similar problems. This was, I think, the biggest eye-opener for me. Like, okay, I said, okay, I put myself out there and also like say that I don't have any kind of answers and any kind of ideas. And then there were other people from wherever, like, I don't know, Australia, Asia, and so on, coming back and say, that's great that you said it because we have the same problem. And I think this is still something where I think it really helps, like when we have more and more people like sharing this stuff, that you have a possibility to see how other people are doing it. And so then by that reflecting and so on, so that you can basically have a bigger network even when you don't have it in your single company too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that you bring that humility to it. It's not just about sort of sitting here and teaching or preaching ideas. No. It's about learning from the people that in the audience and in the community. And yes. As much as community is a word that I think is overhyped, I think just that sort of that natural interaction of wanting to learn together is awesome. I'm going to tell people before I forget where they'll be able to find the show. Again, launching in 2 weeks, May 18th. We're not going to say the first guest because we're going to keep some suspense, but this somebody who's amazing. But they can find it on Kubit's channels. So that's our LinkedIn, our YouTube, and our Twitter. Simulcast also on your channels. So your probably your LinkedIn, your Twitch, and your YouTube. Yeah. Typically on Thursdays, normally around 11 a.m. Pacific time in the US. Let's see if I can do the time zones in my head. Around 2 p.m. Eastern time in the US. And for where you are, Central European time, we're going to say 9 p.m. after the
8 p.m. Yeah.
8 p.m. Yeah. So we'll put it out there. We'll give you all the links. We know that for tech and data people, most of you prefer audio versions, so we'll have it on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, and Google, anything else you ask for. And we love really to hear back from people as well. Mm-hmm. You know, even starting today, send Timo your questions in the comments on any of the platforms, things you want to learn, things you have questions about, feedback on the show, and also suggested guests. You know, looking forward for your ideas for people that we want to learn from. Let's share our logo. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Exciting.
I wanted to do it at the start of the show, but I wasn't sure technically if I could do it. Let me just play it. And you made this on Midjourney. I didn't
really make it. I was just the prompt engineer. So
yes, here we go. So there you have it, folks. The world premiere of our logo. Actually, I already picked it. And apologies to my coworker, Brian. We did not use his music choice because I was fair use. He wanted the Jack Johnson song, Better Together, which was part of the inspiration for the title. But I was just afraid that every time we tried to repurpose parts of the show, we'd end up with issues. So I do like your music choice, and I love the logo. How much time do we have left? Oh, we've still got time.
We have a little bit, yeah.
Since it's a preview show, we didn't want to keep people for too long, and because it's late over in your part of the world, we do apologize to our viewers and friends in India and other parts of Asia. It's not the most convenient time for you. However, who knows, with remote work, people work crazy hours anyway, and then the recordings will be available on all of the platforms, of course. The thing about product data is lots of people who work within data don't really know the specifics of when we say product data. So let's just give a little, description.
Wikipedia definition, yeah.
And I know this is, again, I know you could talk about this for 3 hours, but what is product data when we say product data, and why is it what are its own particularities?
Yeah. It's not really tough to do it in 2 minutes or so. Right. I would mostly say let's take an easy example. So let's say you have some kind of application. So be it an app that someone can get from the App Store on mobile devices. This is where basically I think most of the product analytics, let's say, origin is coming from, basically app analytics. Because the difference was like, as I said, so in an online shop, you have a clear path. So you go in an online shop, you see product that interests you, you buy it, that's it. So it's a very linear way to achieve that.
Or if you're like me, you go through it and you leave it in the cart, right?
Yeah, or that. And then you get an email like, hey, so scary email. Oh, we just saw that for 10 seconds you had that already in your cart. So in product, there's not a clear usage pattern by default when you just look at it. So you work with this constantly, and sometimes even like in different kind of ways. So you have a more like, let's say, so where marketing is a clear funnel, so one line, in product you might have a network of possibilities that you can do. And that makes the analytics part already a lot more challenging, because like you have to see, okay, how do I approach that? So do I do this? And there are tools for that. So do I do this crazy stuff where I want to see all the different kind of path possibilities that people take between these network nodes of possibilities? Can this help me? Sometimes it does. Or do I find a way where I can zoom out and can see, okay, actually, these are the points where I want to get the people to. So when you talk to product people, and this is good because you can connect it with the data, it's like they always would point out there are specific things that people do in a product. So for example, we're in StreamYard, it's a classic product. So we have our first, let's say, value moment because we now are live. And so we do something. So this, for example, in StreamYard product analytics could be a very significant event. But it doesn't really tell the whole story yet, because at some point, like we already did, so if we have to convert to a subscription. And then in best case, we stay for 3 years or so. And these are all the different kind of things that have to map out. So if I would have to summarize it very quickly, marketing analytics is a lot like, it's very operational already in first place. And product analytics is a very, how to say, it's based a lot on discovery work. So at least like this is how I work. So I have some hypothesis what kind of, let's say, things could make sense in a product, but I have to slice and dice, look in different kind of angles on the usage data of a product to identify maybe new hypotheses that I have, and to figure out, okay, what are significant patterns in usage of a product that can tell me something if the product is bringing value or not. So this is where I'm always walking around. But the kind of work that I have is definitely extremely different than in other analytical areas. So for example, with BI, I do a dashboard and everyone looks on the dashboard. The product, it's really like, it's a lot of exploration to figure out, okay.
I don't think you meant that to sound like a commercial for people to go into product analytics, but for true data people, it does make them say like, ooh, I want to go specialize in that, because everybody wants to be in the type of data generally where you can do exploration and discovery. Right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. And then obviously any tooling, tech, and then the processes that allow that and encourage it is kind of, it sounds like the type of product analytics that you do and that you want to see. But those are all the types of things that you'll be getting into with the guests in the coming weeks. Yes. We're going to finish on rapid fire questions, which I usually don't like, but it's because I want to put them on TikTok and it makes them easy. In the future, you're the host, you choose them. I chose them this time. I'm not the most fun person. They're kind of boring, but let's do it. So rapid fire questions, just quick, short answers to them. Timo, in data, what's most underrated these days? Doesn't have to be related to product.
Design. And so how I design which kind of data I want to collect and how I can reduce it and how I can start small. Everyone wants to start big.
Design, most underrated in data. Great. Most overrated thing in data right now.
Okay, I could do the obvious thing like modern data stack. Let me take something different. Tools first. I'm a strong believer in tools. I love tools, but they are not where you start. So you start with the people and then go to the tools.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say Again, I know you're answering the questions, but I want to answer it. Most overrated, I would say, is content creators, which is quite ironic because some people count me as one of those. But what is your
But
biggest...
I will not say, so like,
Yeah.
I know
Go
it's rapid
ahead.
fire, but yes, I can understand everyone who says content creator are overrated. And there are definitely, let's say, types of content creator where I would say, yeah, but still, I still think we should value that there are people who put out their thoughts, their ideas, their experiences, in which kind of way. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your optimism because I can get a bit pessimistic about that. Sticking with being pessimistic, what's your biggest pet peeve these days? That can be in data, product, tech, or really anything in life, your biggest pet peeve.
Okay, so now you have to make a translation for someone who's not native in English.
Pet peeve, something that annoys you, that bothers you. Yeah.
Not taking a step back. Hearing something on a conference, or I'm talking on this kind of show, taking it into a company and say, yeah, this is what we do. But not, let's say, not taking the time to take a step back and reflect on it and then make a decision. So these, I don't know if it's even like a proper Einstein quote, but let's say these like, okay, when I have to solve something, I basically take 55 minutes to come up with the right question and take the last 5 to answer it. I'm not even sure if it's valid or not, but I think the principle makes sense to really like, slow down, take a step back, and
And the nature of work and business is that it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to impose that, even if it's something, because generally it's not something that you need 55 minutes to think about and then 5 minutes to answer. It's more like much, much longer term, and to be able to impose that time or request it or work in that way is difficult. I see that absolutely at every level of work. And this one is final question. This is cheesy, but I'm going to ask it. Who inspires you these days? Again, this could be someone in data, product, tech, or just someone in life in general. I hate questions like this. So I never know what to say when I'm put on the spot.
Yeah. I should have read your questions so I literally didn't read the question that you prepared. So
which is better. The interviews are much more interesting when people have not read the questions. So if you want to tell us in the comments, you can think about that.
Yeah, I can think. So I think I can just tell you why it's so hard to answer. It's like, if I would say a person, it's about this person, and humans are complex. Yeah. So if I would now say Steve Jobs, then of course, which inspired a lot of stuff that I do. It includes also other parts which I wouldn't do, which I wouldn't accept, for example, in a work relationship. This is why I always find this question too hard to put a person there.
Well, say what is it that inspires you, or that you like, that is your kind of takeaway from Steve?
Maybe let's put a person there, because like, I mean, but at least I don't have the full background. But for example, there's Bob Mester, who's like who worked a lot on the jobs to be done approach. And so I'm a strong believer in the whole jobs to be done approach as well. So this was an eye-opener when I was discovering it, and it improved the way how I was working with products significantly, and I would say to the most extent. And I enjoy every conversation that he's doing on any kind of podcast. I enjoy every book that he's writing, just because, like, I don't know how he does it, because like he has a very engineering kind of approach to product, which I guess resonates with me as well. And I just like that he's putting out and say, I want to make a better world by building better products. And so,
love it. Yeah. So say the name for people who don't know Bob Mester.
Bob Mester, yeah. So he worked with Clayton Christensen on I think mostly on the research project that then later became the jobs to be done idea, theory, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes it's a little bit it makes your brain work to get into it, but it's a pretty strong foundation for product.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you spun that into a question for one of the guests we will aspire to get eventually, Bob Mester, right?
Yes.
Love it. Love it. And don't turn the question on me because I have no idea how I'd answer it. All right. This was terrific, Timo. Next time you're hosting with the guest we'll announce next week, show coming up, first official episode in 2 weeks, Better Together with Timo and Kubit. So excited. Thank you. And we will see you again.
Thank you. That was good. Thank you.